Um, I don't know. I'm just making sounds. Just got to fill the.
This sounds like you're mumbling.
I'm mumbling?
No, I'm just kidding. Live in the house.
Yes. What's up, everybody? Corey Singletary here with another episode of CUB Tracks. With me today, as always, next to me is
Tom Content, Citizens Utility Board. Welcome.
So it continues to be, and folks may not know this, but it continues to be what we would call the off season or the slow season utility regulation. But that doesn't mean nothing is happening.
Exactly.
So a couple of things off the top that we wanted to kind of run down. One was some news out of Iowa, which touches on something that we had discussed on a previous episode related to transmission, and we'll get to that. And also, some press had come out recently about, we had mentioned it, that the commission had approved the purchase of the Koshkonong solar and battery electric storage facility by Wisconsin Electric, Wisconsin Public Service Corporation up in Green Bay, and Madison Gas and Electric Company. And there was some press on that, and you were quoted on that.
There you go. There you go.
But we thought that might be another nice opportunity for you to kind of, dig a little deeper than maybe the one sentence and a half that Daniel Keating was able to give you in that story. And then, which, there's only so many column inches.
There's only so much room.
Yep. And the big one we want to talk about today is community solar legislation in Wisconsin. And this one's going to be a little how the sausage is made, I guess.
A little bit of sausage making here.
Yeah, a little behind the scenes. But I think we thought it'd be helpful to maybe, give folks a window into how we look at some of these issues that on their surface seem very simple, very cut and dry, maybe very popular or very unpopular in some cases, and how we have to kind of look at it. But circling back off right at the top, so the Iowa State Supreme Court issued a temporary injunction on a 2020 right of first refusal law related to construction of transmission facilities. And this is kind of a big win for customer protections, managing costs, and not protecting monopoly utilities in all cases.
Exactly. You say right of first refusal. Why is that a big win? And it's a lot. Is that a lot of jargon right at the top? So, but it's really about the ability for companies that are in the business of building transmission line to competitively bid on competitively bid projects for that, and that can actually save ratepayers, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. Mm-hmm. And in Iowa, the legislature had passed this right of first refusal, basically protection legislation for incumbent utilities that essentially protected the incumbent utilities and prevented the competitive bidding. And now that's been thrown out by the highest court in the land, at least the highest court in the land in Iowa.
Highest court in the land in Iowa. And so I think the key point to hit on is, absent this law, there would be the ability to, or in some states, a requirement that these projects be put out for competitive bidding. I believe, but recently, in recent years, there have been a number of neighboring states, multiple states that have passed these right of first refusal laws that basically give these projects to the incumbent utility, the utility that already has some poles and wires in the area, without any consideration of cost. And so the Supreme Court sending this back down to a lower court and really kind of signaling that it felt that the plaintiffs in this case, LS Power, were likely to win their legal arguments on the constitutionality of this right of first refusal law, I think sends the right signal to really everyone in this space as these types of policies are debated, not only in Iowa, but as we've mentioned, also in Wisconsin.
That's right. I mean, for Iowa, it was about $2.5 or more billion of transmission lines that are in the next tranche of big power lines that are in the kind of the mid northern Midwest plan adopted by MISO. And we have a couple $1 billion of potential or future spend coming our way too. Mm-hmm. And it's just a question of will there be this opportunity for savings. And this is a really good step forward. And my favorite quote in there was they called the law quintessentially crony capitalism. So basically, and that would lead to higher costs for Iowa ratepayers if left to stand. So it's big stuff.
Yeah. So we'll be following along with that and see if it has any ripple effects on conversations that might be happening, or perhaps conversations that folks thought they would be having this year in the state legislature about similar bills, similar laws. But hopefully that does not come to pass in Wisconsin, and that we at least leave the door open for competitive bidding to try to always get the lowest cost, or try to get the lowest cost for customers wherever we can.
Yeah, don't take tools away from regulators and that save people money.
That's really what it is, right? It's not like we're asking for a law that would require competitive bidding, although that would be nice. But at least don't take the tools away. So the other one, we had mentioned a couple of weeks ago that the commission approved the Koshkonong facility, which we looked it up today, is a 300 megawatt solar facility with another 145 megawatts of battery electric storage. I believe the Wisconsin Public Radio story described it as the largest solar facility, but that's only really if you lump those two together. So tied neck and neck on biggest facilities, I believe, in Wisconsin are still Badger Hollow.
165 on the storage. Yep.
Sorry, shorter than 20 megawatts.
Yep.
So this would be right up there in terms of solar. It's big at 300 megawatts, just as big as the Badger Hollow facility in southwest Wisconsin. And like we mentioned a couple episodes ago, we had some concerns about that, but I thought that this would be a good opportunity for you to go on the record as to what it is that you feel were the biggest issues in that case from the customer's perspective.
Yeah, I think it was really just the utility needed to do a better, more complete analysis. And that's been our mantra with the WEC Energy Group utilities, Wisconsin Electric, We Energies, and Wisconsin Public Service, that they needed to do a better analysis of all the different economic scenarios and future possibilities when it comes to this, because they didn't do enough there, and it wasn't even shown that it was going to be in the money for customers for the duration. Having said that, once they were moving toward approving the thing, we're certainly supportive that they attach the conditions, the consumer protection conditions relating to cost overruns, and that was a key for us.
Yeah, you were quoted as saying we're really banking on this being cost effective based on the construction cost, and I know when I saw the article and I was like, we're what? But I felt like really what you were trying to say is that the way the commission made its decision is we're kind of gambling. We're kind of betting on it coming in at what the utility said it was.
Yeah.
And as you noted, there are some challenges with construction costs.
Well, the context is that a lot of construction costs have come in higher. So we're in a way where are we taking a leap of faith that it's actually going to come in at the approved amount? But that was an important point.
So some context might have been
some
missing.
Context is always good, but then also the next step, which was important, and was reflected in the article, was the applicants had sought to ask for approval well above the approved amount of $649 million. They're asking all the way up to $752 million, and consistent with some recent decisions and consistent with what you put in our comments. In CUB's comments, they didn't allow that.
Yeah, that's sort of a holdover legacy of Wisconsin regulation, construction in Wisconsin, where for years and years, the utilities would ask essentially upfront for approval of up to 110% of the projected cost, and along with that, they sought to only have, like we commented, I think on the last podcast, the one before, they asked to only have to tell the regulator, to tell the commission that they were going to run over on costs, and after they had gone over that 110 threshold. So by the time they told anybody that it's going to come in more expensive than they thought it was, you're already 10% over budget. Those are
Makes
good.
no sense.
Well, at least to you and I, it makes no sense. To someone, apparently, it makes sense.
Well, yes, exactly.
But yeah, so those are good protections there. But yeah, I sat down. I know I messaged you after the story came out. And I'm like, this is not quite what we said and what our position was on this story. But so we thought it'd be good to get you to just kind of talk about that project a little bit more. So the big I don't know item in Wisconsin, and it's not actually in the regulatory area that we really deal with mostly, but we keep an eye on things that happen downtown because things ultimately trickle downhill to our sort of part of the sandbox.
Exactly.
And I believe about a week ago, a draft piece of legislation was circulated for co-sponsors that would seek to enable non-utility owned community solar development. And this is not a new concept for the Wisconsin legislature. A similar bill, not the same bill, worded very differently in many respects. But a similar concept was floated last year in the legislature. And that one, I don't recall, did that one get a hearing, or did it just kind of?
It did not get a hearing.
Kind of withered away.
Yes, it just withered away basically. But it got some attention because it's Republican co-sponsors, and so that got a lot of media coverage. And we looked at it that last time and saw a couple little provisions that we were kind of concerned about, but we were able to get some changes, and so we were on board with that bill.
Yeah, we weren't as involved on the front, way up front, way early. Like I think we worked with them after it was really introduced. And it got some co-sponsors, and we were able to work with folks to have some amendments to the language that got it to the point where we were comfortable with it. So anyway, that was last year. That bill sort of withered on the vine, but it's it's a new session. New days and new legislation to be brought forth before the legislature, and so a draft was circulated, and that came before it was shared with the utilities. Obviously, it's being shared with legislators for co-sponsorship, and the last week, I believe it was about midweek, or actually near the end of last week, the Customers First Coalition, which CUB is a member of, did send out a letter to the legislature indicating that it could not support the community solar bill as it was drafted.
As currently drafted, that's right.
Yeah, and so this is we thought this was an interesting one to maybe talk about a little bit because we've talked about on this show about how we support essentially options for customers, making it so that customers have options to do things like different ways of financing, maybe rooftop solar, right?
The whole third-party solar. We've been active in those cases over at the PSC.
We participated in the interconnection rulemaking working group because we wanted to make certain that that discussion was fairly balanced and considered not only the utilities' technical needs but also the customer perspective there, and also not just the renewable developer needs, right? We want to make certain that there's a customer in between those two groups.
Yes, don't forget the customer.
Don't forget the customer. And we, so it might seem odd that we did not, or at least at present, do not support this draft legislation.
Well, and then because we do support the concept, right? And then, but the question is, it's that balancing act. There's for everything you're doing for a solar customer, there can be impacts and effects on customers that aren't a part of a community solar or solar project. So, and that's where the balancing act comes in as the customer advocate for all the residential and small business customers.
So maybe taking a step back so folks kind of have a feel of what we're talking about. So what this right now, I'll use as an example Madison Gas and Electric, all right? Because we're right here in Madison. MG&E several years ago put in place, I believe, the first investor-owned utility-sited community solar project in Wisconsin. I believe there was a co-op project before that. But so over in the City of Middleton Municipal Services Maintenance Building, they have a big flat roof. And the city, and MG&E worked with them to put in about 0.5 megawatt of rooftop solar, and they opened up subscriptions to MG&E customers, and folks could subscribe, and then they would get credits. They would get essentially, the way that it works, essentially they get credits on their bill in addition to paying for their subscription in the community solar, but they get to invest in rooftop solar. That's not on their roof, but they get the financial benefit through their bills. And so that is a utility-owned project. And this would make it so that someone other than the utility could develop a community solar project, and that similarly the financial benefits that flow from the generation of that facility, from the electricity produced by that solar, could flow to the customers, to the subscribing customers through their bills, through bill credits. And, in principle, that we don't have a problem with that. But we did have some specific issues, and one of them was the same issue we had last year, which is how the law directed the commission to set that community solar credit rate.
Right. The devil's always in the details, and the details are actually how it actually will get implemented over at the PSC.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we've learned, one through working through drafting sort of our own legislation and talking with folks and I guess advising parties on when they draft legislation, is when you're talking about laws, not the rules are the more technical implementation, but on the law, if the law specifies a goal, an outcome objective, right, that becomes the driving factor. And the challenge is that, the language from this year's bill said, quote, that the commission need to set the rate at a level that, quote, creates a community solar market that is capable of being financed. Right? And on its face, we don't have a problem with advocates for community solar, for development of community solar, pushing for that in the legislation, right? That's their right. That's
exactly.
Totally legit. But from the utility customer perspective, right, these credits would be paid for by the utilities. And if the goal is the creation of a community solar market, not setting rates that reflect the actual value or cost of that electricity, then you potentially you lock a goal into the law that says you have to do one thing. You have to set the rates in a way that would likely harm non-participating customers.
Right. It ends up creating a seesaw effect where it's like you're favoring one and potentially having other impacts on others. So.
Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge. And, we worked with folks last year to kind of massage that language. And, the Customers First indicated in its letter, and, we are always, here, just CUB, we're always open to talking with folks about how to amend or improve legislation, at least from our perspective. But that's kind of our biggest concern, is that the way that is set up in the draft legislation in terms of creating that credit. There were a couple other items. One was that the utility would have to allow the community solar developer to essentially bank the value of unsubscribed portions of the facility, right? The thing gets built, gets turned on, but maybe on day one they haven't subscribed the whole facility out to customers. But it's still generating electricity, which goes to the grid and has some value, some cash value, right? But the utility would essentially have to serve as a bank for that up to 2 years, and then the community solar developer could tell the utility how that would be dispersed. And that, again, is kind of it's a shadow cost to all other customers, because they have to maintain this balance, and there are potential financial implications for that. And then there were other things like the law would require that the utilities create a platform, like a communications platform, for the community solar developers to communicate with their subscribers. And if anyone it can be frustrating sometimes, and even to us, but if you talk to anyone at a utility, doing things like changes to billing systems, changing to customer communications systems, that costs money. And so that, again, those are costs to be borne by all customers, not necessarily would potentially be borne by all customers, not just the community solar developers. And a few other things. So that's kind of like, when we saw this, there were a bunch of issues there. I don't know what else you thought when this was circulated.
I mean, I think it just shows that the concept is great, but getting the details right makes sense. And so hopefully there'll be openness to, consider alternatives, consider improvements to make. It's not like we don't want to see this happen. It's just a question of how it happens and getting it right.
It is about striking that balance, right? And certainly the legislature, writes the laws, and if the legislature decides as a matter of state public policy that the goal really is to develop a market for community solar, then that's the purview of the lawmakers, right? But it's our job as the advocate for all utility customers to make certain that there is that balance, or at least that balance is considered when these laws are written. And like I said, the Customers First Coalition did indicate in its letter that that it's open to amendments to make this palatable. But just from CUB's perspective, we are very much open to working with stakeholders to improve this legislation, at least from our perspective, to make it something that can be hopefully a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, I think it can be. It's just a matter of getting all the right people in the room to hash out the compromise.
Yeah, we didn't want folks to see stuff floating around downtown, be like, CUB hates community solar. It's like we don't. We have no problem with the concept.
Exactly.
It's just. We can't say it enough. The devil's in the details, whether it's legislation, rulemaking, rate making,
Supreme Court decisions,
all those types of things. So that'll be something we'll keep an eye on, and we'll update folks as it progresses. It's early days in the session this year. I have a feeling that the budget's going to suck most of the air out of the room.
It usually does.
Yeah.
In the odd-numbered year.
Yeah. So, but if there are movements there, we'll make certain to keep customers updated so they can, follow along with that. And certainly if people have feelings on this one way or another, obviously you can contact your legislator and, make certain that they know where you stand on things.
Exactly.
We have a particular task in terms of making certain that try to make certain that everything is fair as possible. And that's sometimes a tough balance to strike.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a balancing act. That's as you said. It's just, and that doesn't make it easy, but it makes it all the more important that things are in balance.
All right. Cool. Well, so just looking ahead, I think we had teased it last time, but with it being the 27th today, and by the time folks are listening to this, it'll probably be somewhere around April. Actually, no, it'll be tomorrow. It'll be the 28th. But by the time folks are listening to this, the utilities will have reported on their fuel costs for 2022, and we'll kind of have a picture on that. And there's some construction projects that are moving before the commission, both on natural gas as well as some battery electric storage that we'll continue to update folks on.
Yeah, we'll have more to say on those.
All right, cool. Well, I'm staring up at the camera, and I'm reminding myself I have a checklist for doing these shows that I still have not completed, so I don't end up staring at what I'm staring at right now, which is that the memory card for the camera just filled up. So reminder for folks that this is a side hustle for us, this podcast here. So we're not professionals, so things get weird. So if you are listening to this if you're watching this on YouTube, you are currently being treated to whatever weird random stock video that I found. It might be cats. I don't know.
Cats are always good. So what a way to end the podcast. Cats, more cats.
Cats, more. I mean, cats.
More cat video.
They're probably more exciting than some of what we deal with here, but maybe less impactful.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you, Tom.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for everyone.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe.
All that good stuff.
Rate the show. It helps us out. And we'll catch everyone in the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.